Good morning, everyone. The prayer this morning will be by Pastor Evelyn of the Olivet Gospel Hall, representing the Evangelical Association.
Praise the Lord. Let us bow in reverence to the Lord of life at this time. The word admonishes, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Heavenly Father and O God, I come to thee in the Holy Spirit through the Lord Jesus Christ, thy only beloved Son, in whom thou art well pleased, sitting at thy right hand, and making intercession for all of the household of God at this time. Heavenly Father, we thank thee for our awakeness this morning, this 10th day of July, in the first month of the third quarter, in the year of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, 2025, in the newness of life, in our right minds, conscious of our being and our surroundings. We thank thee for the safekeeping of our household and all in our respective neighborhood. O Lord God, in thy precious name I come to thee with thanksgivings for thy loving kindness, thy faithfulness, thy steadfast love, thy tender mercies, and thy matchless grace toward us, the people of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis, in the second half of the year, by day and by night, granting us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding in our daily act of service. We give thee praise, honor, and glory that is due to thy matchless name. O Lord God of heaven and earth, that ruleth in the affairs of men, I bring to thee the Honorable Madam Speaker and the Madam Deputy Speaker of this assembly, that thou wilt grant them the wisdom and the understanding as they conduct the business of the assembly in accordance with the regulations, the rules, and orders to uphold the principles with due fairness and justice to all in attendance. Lord, I bring to thee the elected men and women of this gathered here today to discuss the business matters of this administration that is at hand. Indeed, O Lord, thou knowest their heart's intent, their emotions, and their aspirations. Grant them the wisdom and the understanding that in their discussions they will conduct themselves with respect towards each other as good stewards of their elected responsibilities. I pray that in their quest they will earnestly exercise their steadfast servanthood service with all prudence, with due diligence, with compassion, with justice, and with distinction, without fear or favor toward the people of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis, of whom they are elected to serve, putting country above self at all levels of service with love, justice, and fairness. O Lord God of heaven and earth, I pray that the matters on the order paper for today's discussion will be with goodwill, with fairness, and with justice that will impact the positive well-being of the citizens and residents of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis going forward with your blessings. These things with humbleness of heart I ask with thanksgiving in our Savior's precious name. Amen. May all join me with our Father prayer at this time. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Pastor Evelyn. You may be seated. Recognize the honourable member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I would like to propose a slight amendment to the order paper. I want to move a motion to include the word social in front of the word development under item O, where it should read Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill, and similarly under item P, where it should again read Housing and Social Development Levy Bill.
Madam Speaker, I second the motion.
Thank you. The question is that the order paper be amended as moved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Order paper.
Confirmation of minutes. Messages from the Governor General.
There are no messages from the Governor General.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Yes, please. Firstly, my office is in receipt of apologies from the honourable members for St. Christopher 4, St. Christopher 6, and St. Christopher 7. Those members will not be present for today's proceedings. Additionally, outstanding minutes will be circulated electronically. Those minutes are to be reviewed as we intend to ventilate same and confirm at the next sitting of this honourable House. Those are the notices for this morning.
Presentation of papers and of reports from committees. Petitions. Government notices. Unofficial notices. Questions. Requests for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers.
I recognize the Honourable Senator, Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With your leave, kindly permit me to deliver this very brief statement on behalf of the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action, Constituency Empowerment, in particular the Department of Environment. And this relates to our plastic ban update connected to Pillar 6, of our Sustainable Island State Agenda, which is the circular economy and ties into the broader thematic focal area in the ministry, which is pollution, waste management, and the circular economy. So the Department of Environment continues to sensitize the public as the ministry prepares to implement phase 2 of the single-use plastic ban. Through the Plastic Waste Reduction Act 2025, which was passed in this honorable House, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis is committed to a phased approach for single-use plastic products deemed environmentally harmful. The goal of the single-use plastic ban is to promote sustainable practices while reducing our plastic footprint. I remind you of our implementation window as approved by this honorable House. In phase 1, we had the ban of T-shirt plastic shopping bags in December 31, 2024. And in March 31, 2025, it was fully enforced. Phase 2 will see the import ban on styrofoam food containers, plastic straws, and styrofoam egg crates. On July 31st, 2025, which is just about 2.5 weeks from today, the import ban would be fully enforced. And I'm certain that some of you have seen in your supermarkets, and I'm not going to call any supermarket to seem like I'm biased, but they have switched some of their egg crates to the paper crates, and in some of your frequently visited restaurants, you're now having different containers with your food. The transition is happening. And of course, in phase 3, August 31st, we'll see the import ban of single-use plastic cups, plates, and cutlery. And of course, by 30th November 2025, we'll see a ban on the distribution and sale of these items. In preparation for phase 2 of the ban, the Department of Environment has visited the majority of the establishments on the Buckley's to Deep Bay, the western side of the island, to raise awareness, and this includes all the mom and pop shops, restaurants, etc., about the upcoming phase and provide support in terms of how they can transition. The exercise has been successful so far, as none of the shops or supermarkets visited distributed any plastic bags, which is good. While we do have some one-off challenges, we have consultations with them, we talk to them and make recommendations. It's a clear indication that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis have been responding positively to the change. Collaboration has been done with the Department of Constituency Empowerment, which continues to conduct sensitization exercises in and around Bastille, where we're seeing much of the problem still with some of our vendors and persons who sell farm produce. The Department of Environment continues to engage with the business community to ensure they are informed of the phases and provide guidance on the acceptable alternatives. These efforts will continue to ensure widespread dissemination of information, including outreach to our mom and pop shops, supermarkets, restaurants, and food vendors. Phase 2 of the Plastic Waste Reduction Act 2025 takes effect on August 1st. This will prohibit the sale and distribution of styrofoam food containers. So a special note here to our revelers who will be participating in the Culturama festivities. We saw similar with Music Festival, and we're very grateful. A very serious and concerted effort to be sustainable in the food items that were presented to the patrons, and we expect similar with the revelers at the Culturama Festival, which we will all be attending. To enhance public awareness, the Department of Environment continues to expand its social media reach, including partnering with social media influencers for targeted investments and advertisements. Of course, I remind you of our business support. The import duty concessions remain available for approved sustainable alternatives. The Enforcement Coordination, the Customs and Excise Department, the Bureau of Standards, and the Department of Environment are working closely to enforce the ban. This includes getting your import licenses, which is done through the Department of Environment. You get your certificate, it's approved, and you can import approved items according to the Bureau of Standards. And of course, our public education continues with our communications and research and education unit at the ministry and the department. We're out with the Taiwan Technical Mission, with SIP Sustainably, with Man in the Biosphere, with the CFBC PROMA project, closing the plastic tap project, and the Department of Constituency Empowerment. So it is a multi-stakeholder approach to ensuring the public education and sensitization campaign works. Phase 3 of the Plastic Waste Reduction Act 2025 commences on August 31st with the ban on the importation of plastic cups, plates, and cutlery. I repeat again, Phase 3 of the Plastic Waste Reduction Act 2025 commences on August 31st with the ban on the importation of plastic cups, plates, and cutlery. Stakeholders are reminded that to import single-use plastic alternatives, they must first apply for an import license from the Department of Environment, followed by the application to import the alternatives. The import license is only $100 and is valid until December 31st and must be renewed the 1st of January annually. The license ensures that persons or businesses involved in importing sustainable alternatives, or SUPs, comply with the relevant environmental and regulatory standards promoting the transition toward eco-friendly solutions. The license is required for the importation of bioplastic alternatives. So you can't just go and purchase them and clear them. You must have a license to present to Customs and Excise. Concession is in place until 2027 as approved by the Cabinet and, of course, this Parliament. on non-plastic alternatives made from materials such as canvas and paper. We want to thank the people of St. Kitts and Nevis for your continued support with the ministry's effort to ban single-use plastics, to transition to sustainable alternatives, and indeed to make St. Kitts and Nevis a sustainable island state, focusing on the circular economy, pollution, and waste management. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the Honorable Senator Clark. Is there another statement? I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher II.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With your permission, of course, I rise to make a brief presentation on the recently established National Productivity Council, which came out of the recommendations made by the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee. I would like at this time to thank and give my sincere congratulations to the members of the committee. I see the chairperson, Madam Speaker, in the public gallery, His Excellency Sam Condor. Subsection 6 of the Act, which is number 3 of 2024, I remember when we came here and debated this, speaks to the composition of the council. The rationale for the establishment of the Productivity Council, like I said, came from the recommendations of the committee. One of the recommendations listed in the final report published on 5th December 2024, specifically recommendation 3, at page 18, says any future increases in the minimum wage should take into consideration the issue of productivity, hence the importance of such a body, Madam Speaker. The importance of productivity to economic growth and national development was highlighted by the esteemed governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Timothy Antoine, during the 2025 National Budget Consultation. The governor said to achieve a 7% annual growth rate and double the gross domestic product from 2.3 billion to 4.6 billion requires resilience building, skills development, strategic investment, and, Madam Speaker, productivity. He said all of these must be embraced as essential components of this vision. The governor also identified productivity as the fastest way to boom economic growth. Subsection 4 of the Act speaks to the purpose and mandate of the council, and the council's mandate essentially is to promote a culture of productivity, efficiency, and innovation in the public and private sectors. The council will also work on fostering a collaborative environment for the exchange of ideas and experiences related to productivity. The council's mandate also includes enhancing productivity levels within the civil sector and the general workforce. Madam Speaker, we continue to reiterate the need for the establishment of the council and its work, and we were happy in the Ministry of Labor and Employment to see on Tuesday of this week the members of the council receive their instruments by the Governor General. A sustainable island state, this government is clearly focused on making sure that is in place, and it is our view at the Ministry of Labor and Employment and the government's view overall that the establishment of the council is directly related to the government's focus on creating the sustainable island state. For us, a sustainable island state is one where income inequality and anti-poverty measures are adequately addressed, and the lowest paid workers earn a livable wage where they could fully participate in a harmonious and socially responsible society. Time will not allow us today, Madam Speaker, to put the minimum wage discussions into its proper historical context. But I just want to reference the last 2 decades to present this morning, In 2004, the minimum wage was increased from $6.25 per hour, $6.25 to $250 a week. In 2008, by a Labour government as well, from Labour-led administration, from $7.50 per hour to $300 per week, or $300 per week. And 2014, from $9 per hour, or $360 per week. In 2018, there was a committee that convened and no recommendations were made. And this Labour-led administration took the recommendations of the National Minimum Wage Advisory Committee in 2023. The committee was commissioned in March, and in November, the Cabinet received the recommendations that the minimum wage be increased from $10.75 per hour to $12.50 per hour. In March 2024, the National Minimum Wage Advisory Committee established a minimum wage increasing monitoring committee. So even after the increase, there was a monitoring committee, and the committee is still in place. The purpose and function of the committee was to assess the impact of phase 1 of the increase in the minimum wage and potential challenges of phase 2. I wish to pause here to express and record sincere thanks and appreciation to this government, of which I'm a part of, on behalf of this government, to the committee, that is the monitoring committee led by Patricia Welch from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, for the excellent work that they continue to do. After extensive consideration and analysis based on the in-depth discussions with the relevant stakeholders and the information and data received from the relevant stakeholders comprising government and private sector, it was the considered view of the committee that phase 2 of the increased minimum wage be introduced. The committee submitted its report in December 2024, and included in the report are 25 recommendations that were considered by the Cabinet. Among the recommendations are 2 that we considered as core. One of them is the establishment of the council. And so, Madam Speaker, we are proud to say, and I want to congratulate the committee as well, and we are proud to see the work that is coming out from the National Minimum Wage Monitoring Committee. And so today, I just want to thank the committee and its members, wish them the best. I look forward to the work that will come from the committee. The committee is well comprised, representing members from, I know there was a recommendation made by the Premier of Nevis, the member for number 9. We have recommendations from the St. Kitts and Nevis Trades and Labor Union. These persons are actually on the council and form part of the council. St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the Ministry of Labor and Employment. Recommendations came from the Prime Minister's office, as well as the Deputy Governor on Nevis office. So the committee is well comprised, and we look forward, Madam Speaker, to the work that will come from the National Productivity Council. We take the view that this is the only way that we can really have growth, as was said by the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 2. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to make a brief statement on some critical projects that are in train in our federation, and in particular, to update this Honourable House and by extension the people of St. Kitts and Nevis on the very significant strides that are being made under this administration to transform our national infrastructure, particularly in the areas of road rehabilitation and water security. Madam Speaker, the government, as I would have mentioned some time ago, of St. Kitts and Nevis, the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party administration is presently executing one of the most ambitious road development agendas in this country's history in the first 3 years of any administration, with over $80 million being allocated to road infrastructure enhancement across the island. These rehabilitations, of course, are not merely cosmetic. They are comprehensive, community-centered, involving road widening, improved drainage, sidewalks where necessary, improved engineering to improve resilience and longevity. For instance, from the main arteries, such as the St. Peter's Main Road and the F.D. Williams Highway East, we are moving aggressively and systematically to get all of this work being done. I want to give an update on the progress of some of these projects. The St. Peter's Main Road and F.D. Williams East, which spans from the roundabout by the airport westwards to the roundabout above Shadwell Housing, northwards to St. Peter's, all the way up to Orgies, is substantially complete. The work that is being done now are some additional works and finishing some of the other works like marking of the streets. If you pass by the roundabout presently above Shadwell, which is at the western end of the runway, you would realize that there is some work being done on the additional side. This is to facilitate an additional lane that is being implemented. I think in discussions with the police department, it is observed that there is increased congestion through the slip road that people presently use just behind the original end of the runway, and it's difficult for those vehicles to merge into the traffic. However, because of the airport's fence, the road cannot be widened on the northern side there. So we cannot put in a slip lane where that is. So we're now going to move that slip lane over to the other end where we can have a dedicated lane for traffic coming from St. Peter's to merge into the F.D. Williams Highway. So that work is being done right now. So that project is substantially complete. When we look at Palmetto Point, that is complete. New concrete road development in Palmetto Point. For the new concrete road development in Boyd's View, that is now complete. For the new concrete development in Racecourse Newton Ground, that is now complete. For the new development concrete road in Rollins St. Paul's, that is also now complete. For the new concrete development happening in White House in St. Peter's, that is substantially complete. So almost there, not completed as yet. And then Shadwell West and Shadwell South is about 80 to 85% complete. We also have Stonefort, which was also completed some time ago. So those are 7 major concrete road infrastructure developments within communities that are complete or substantially complete. And of course, we will be knocking on the door again of our distinguished Prime Minister for the next phase of our road rehabilitation efforts, because we have other areas, of course, that we want to address. Shadwell East in constituency number 2. We have Lodge Project in constituency number 7. We have Farm Meadows in constituency number 5. We have Green Tree or Green Acres or Green Tree Housing in constituency number 4. It starts with a green. I can't remember the last part of that. We have some areas in St. Paul's. I think they call that area Willets, if I'm not mistaken, and many others that we have on board. Bayview in Bastille, Doers also in Bastille, East-West Farm, which is a significant one, also that is expanding, and there needs to be some serious infrastructure there. All of these are already at the planning stage for public works, getting ready for public tendering. So the roadworks are continuing. That is the new road developments. And then for existing road developments that we are rehabilitating, we have good news. We have completed a significant amount, whether it is Warner Park, Bay Road East, Boyd's Village by Bontewell School, Market Street, Spot Street, Lower Monkey Hill, Fort Lands, Wigley Avenue, Trafalgar, Atlas Village, Harris's, Limekeel Housing, Limekeel by the Abattoir, New Road East, and there is some work to do in New Road West as well. Southwell Drive, the industrial site in particular, which was in a very bad state for quite some time, and we gave the commitment that we had it in our schedule. That is now complete, to the point where we are getting letters from the businesses there thanking the government for finally attending to that particular thoroughfare that is a major business corridor at the Paul Southwell industrial sites. That's now complete. We're presently in George Street. Now, George Street might appear to be taking longer than some of the others, and I would take this opportunity to explain why. When we are doing road resurfacing, we try as much as possible to look to see if there are infrastructural improvements that can be done. And in George Street, because that road has not been rehabilitated for a very long time, there are a lot of aged pipelines in and below George Street. As you know, in that area, there's not a lot of yard space for residents, so a lot of the connections are actually made in the road, and so it's going to take some time to complete that. Also, George Street has had a particular issue with drainage, and so the engineers are looking to see how best we can get the water out of George Street. All of that is, well, it has been designed and being implemented, so it will take a little time before it is covered. So we want to ask the residents for their patience and their understanding. As we improve the situation, there might be maybe a little dust, there might be a little inconvenience, but it is necessary for us to progress forward. I want to especially thank the member for constituency number 1, who has brought a lot of these issues to the fore, and we are dealing with them. So I want to thank him for his leadership on that, member for number 1 in particular. We are also presently in Sandy Point, member for number 5. I think you would be happy to learn that your colleague, Ambassador Kenneth Douglas, who is also from the area, has been making a very strong argument as to why we should be attending to the roads in Sandy Point. And as a result, we are there now resurfacing some roads that have needed some resurfacing for quite some time. And we're happy to announce that we have done the road on the western side of the playfield, which I think is called Burks Road. Borks, maybe from Sandy Point. Borks Road, and then the other on the eastern side of the playfield, which I think is by Cleverly Hill. We are also addressing that road, and we will also be doing some infrastructure assistance to the Pump Bay Road, which leads to Fig Tree. So Sandy Point is getting their due, and then we're going to come up to Halfway Tree that has some roads that we are attending to there in Boyd's Village, where we see some deterioration there as well. We're going to go into my area as well, Infirmary Road, Trafalgar Road, what we call the Miss Utley Road, and so on. We have quite a bit to do there. We're going up by the member for number 2 as well, has been in our ears about New Road West. That is New Road by the New Road by the going up from the Play Park. Fort Thomas Road, which is in the heart of the constituency as well. Clico Housing in St. Peter's area is also on the docket. We have Tabernacle as well, Wingfield, Molyneux, among others. As you see, it's an extensive project of rehabilitation that we are undertaking. I want to take this opportunity to thank the hard-working staff at the Public Works Department. This is not easy, right, to do with the tremendous amount of resurfacing that we are doing and the new roads that we are building, all for the benefit of our people and those who use those pathways. Now, Madam Speaker, if I may, I want to also turn our attention to the advancements we are making with water. I invite persons to take a drive whenever they can to the Paul Southwell industrial site to take a look from a distance, because it's an active construction zone, of the 2 million gallon a day desalination plant that is being built to ensure that we have water security in Bastia and its environs. I am pleased to report that there is excellent progress on this landmark desalination plant, which, when completed, of course, will add 2 million gallons of water to our water supply daily in the Bastia area. As of today, the project is about 80% complete. I visited recently. All of the critical infrastructure is in place. The divers who are going to be installing the line that goes out to the sea should be here either this week or next week to lay those lines. As would have been reported before, all of the environmental impact assessments have been done, and now it's just about getting to completion. So with 80% of the critical infrastructure already in place, and the final installations happening, testing also is expected to be completed in the coming months. We're just months away. This project is not only going on time, because we have to ensure that we keep these projects going, but it is on target to be transformative for our people of St. Kitts and Nevis. It is intended that when the Bastia desalination plant is complete, that we would be able to bring the entire Bastia basin back to 24-hour-a-day water. That has not happened for 10 to 15 years. So I am speaking of everywhere in Bastia, north up into St. Peter's, that will be positively over to the Southeast Peninsula, that will be positively affected by this improvement. How do you ask, will the water reach to St. Peter's? So our water infrastructure is interconnected. And so if we're able to put water into the Bastia area, we will now be able to pump water that we would normally pump to some of our storage facilities to other areas. And in fact, we are presently undertaking a project of interconnection of a number of our wells to give us the flexibility to pump the water that we will normally take from the Bastia Valley Aquifer and put it, for instance, in our storage at Mon Peak, which is above Bird Rock, and pump that water directly to St. Peter's. So by having the desalination plant active in the Bastia area, it expands our possibility of reach. Now, some may ask, okay, well, that's Bastia and its surroundings. That's West Farm, that's Connery, that's up to Keon. We'll have 24-hour water. Well, what about the rest of the country? When we came, of course, there was into administration, there was only a very small percentage of the country that had 24-hour water service. Now we have expanded that by going over to Keon and getting 24-hour service in that area. We are now on the verge of building a larger capacity tank, because now we have more water than tank space, which is a good thing. So you ask, what about the rest of the country? Well, I'm pleased to report that in our quest for long-term water resilience, particularly in these areas in rural communities, the ministry recently undertook a drone-based geophysical survey to identify viable groundwater sources across the island, and in particular in the rural areas. The results are looking extraordinarily promising based on the preliminaries. We haven't gotten the final report yet. They are about a week or two away from that. But it's encouraging, especially in the New Guinea, St. Paul's, the Parsons area. What I also want to, what the results are showing is that it indicates a high probability of sustainable aquifers that we can draw on. This is an exciting development for the areas that have historically faced water shortages, especially over the past decade. We are now at the final stages of the procurement process for the drilling. In fact, the procurement process is complete. A driller has been identified, and the contract is about to be signed. I think the Attorney General's office is wrapping up the final details of that. And that is because we're doing things as well in the ministry in parallel. So while the sites are being identified, while the wells are being scoped out, we are also procuring the drilling to go along with it, so that as soon as we get results to say that this is the point to drill, the driller is standing by with his drill to go into the soil and give us some water. So actual drilling operations are expected to commence later in the year once the sites have been identified. Madam Speaker, this is really a perfect example of science and technology and leadership being harnessed to serve our people, especially those in the rural areas, those in our farming communities who rely so heavily on consistent water supply for their livelihood. This also marks an important stage of our Sustainable Island State agenda. We are in not too distant future. We will be able to provide a reliable service of water. That is something that we committed to and something that we are bringing to fruition. And I want to thank my cabinet colleagues for their extraordinary support, in particular the Minister of Finance and our Prime Minister and the entire team for supporting us in these endeavors. They are very costly endeavors. They require significant capital investment. They require significant political will to be able to make these decisions, and I think that it is bearing fruit for us. So with those words on roads and water, may it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the honourable member for St. Christopher 3. Is there another statement? Madam Clerk.
Personal explanations. Motions relating to the business of the National Assembly and moved by a minister. Introduction of bills and first reading.
I recognize the honourable member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to introduce and have read for a first time in this honourable House the bill shortly entitled Housing and Social Development Levy, Amendment Bill 2025.
Is there a seconder? I recognize the Honourable Attorney General.
May it please you, Madam Speaker, I second that motion.
The question is that the bill shortly entitled Housing and Social Development Levy, Amendment Bill 2025 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Housing and Social Development Levy Act, Cap 20.21, and for related matters, otherwise known as the Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill shortly entitled Housing and Social Development Levy, Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a first time. Next bill. I recognize the honourable member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to introduce or move a motion to introduce and have read for a first time a bill shortly entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025.
Seconder. I recognize the Honorable Senator Phillip.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second that motion.
The question is that the bill shortly entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Larceny Act, Cap 4.16, otherwise known as the Larceny Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill shortly entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a first time. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
May it please you, Madam Speaker, I rise to seek your leave to introduce and have read for the first time in this honorable House a bill shortly titled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025.
Seconder.
I second that motion, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Member of St. Christopher 1.
I second the motion, Madam Speaker.
The question is that the bill shortly entitled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Judge Alone Trials Act, number 20 of 2024, otherwise known as the Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill shortly entitled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a first time. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
May it please you, Madam Speaker, I rise again to seek your leave to have read for a first time and introduce into this honorable House a bill shortly titled Industrial Designs Bill 2025.
Seconder. I recognize the Honorable Senator, Dr. Clark.
Madam Speaker, I second that motion.
The question is that the bill shortly entitled Industrial Designs Bill 2025 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to provide for the protection and registration of industrial designs in St. Christopher and Nevis, and for related matters, otherwise known as the Industrial Designs Bill 2025.
The bill shortly entitled Industrial Designs Bill 2025 has been read a first time. Next item.
Public Business Bills, second reading.
I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to move a motion to have read for a second time in this honorable House the bill shortly entitled the Housing and Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025. Madam Speaker, I rise to lead this particular debate on the Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025. What this bill seeks to do is a very short bill, actually, a one-pager, is to amend Section 3(2)(a) of the Principal Act to ensure that no housing and social development levy is deducted from the wages of employees earning up to $520 per week or $27,040 per year. Why do we have to come to the Parliament to ensure that no one pays housing and social development levy up to $520 per week? Do you know why we have to come to Parliament for this? Because this Labour Party administration has held true to its commitment to ensure that the minimum wage of St. Kitts and Nevis is $500 per week. $500 per week. A commitment made and a commitment kept. And so we've done this already in this administration when we would have increased the minimum wage from $360 to $430 last year, January. if my memory serves me right, of 2024. And so this is to ensure that no one who works just above minimum wage ends up getting less than someone who is at minimum wage, because at minimum wage, social housing and social development levy is not deducted. So this change is really a recommendation, naturally, by the National Minimum Wage Advisory Committee, and of course supported by the Social Security Board. As mentioned, it ensures that with the recent implementation of the new minimum wage of $500 per week, that there is no anomaly such that workers earning just above this new minimum wage of $500 will not take home less than those earning exactly $500 due to the levy's deduction. So under this amendment, Madam Speaker, which, as I said, is a simple one-page amendment, the employee's earnings of $520 per week or less will no longer have levy deducted. The employee's contribution of 3% remains unchanged, however. So, Madam Speaker, this targeted exemption ensures, of course, that small increases in earnings do not result in reduction of net income. So anybody earning 501, 502, 3, 4, 5, right up to 20, their deductions will not carry them less than the minimum wage earner. So this is, as always, to protect the low wage or the lower wage earners. It, of course, maintains fairness, and it preserves the integrity of our social contribution system. There's not much to explain, but for thoroughness, we should explain that the reasoning for this recommendation is really very clear. Exemption of the HSDL, which is the Housing and Social Development Levy, be granted to workers earning minimum wage plus an additional $20. These are the recommendations to a maximum of $520. That workers earning up to the stipulated minimum wage are not burdened with the housing levy, and that a wage of up to $520 was just the 5% deduction of the Social Security that is applicable to all employees would ensure that employees receive up to $20 more than the minimum wage, is not worse off than the employees who receive the minimum wage net pay of $475. So, Madam Speaker, just for some examples, or well, for thoroughness, for persons who are weekly paid, no levy will be deducted from your wages up to $520 per week. If you are paid bi-weekly, no deduction will happen for wages up to $900 bi-weekly. For persons who are paid twice per month, for instance, in the civil service, or every half month, no levy will be deducted on wages up to and including $1,126.67. And for persons being paid on a monthly basis, no levy will be deducted from wages up to and including $2,253.33. It is important to note as well, as I mentioned earlier, that employees' contribution on behalf of each employee is not affected by these changes. The employer's portion of the levy remains at 3% and is payable in respect of all wages paid. So the real news today is not that we're making this technical adjustment to ensure that the salary remains or the wages remain fair on the border of transitioning from minimum wage to above minimum wage. But the real news today is that the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration continues to be the only administration that makes a priority the working class of this country. It is in 2025 that the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration has increased the minimum wage to $500 per week. It is in 2024 that the St. Kitts Nevis Labour administration increased the minimum wage to $430. It is in 2014 that the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration increased the minimum wage to $360. And continue back, it has been the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration who has seen it fit to consult with the stakeholders involved at all levels, whether it be the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, whether it be the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union, whether it is the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, whether it is Ministry of Finance. It has been the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party who, since 1932, has decided that we are a political party on behalf of the working class of this country, and that there should be no advancement in our economy, that there should be no advancement in the development of our country, that there should be no advancement in anything in this country, and the workers don't come along with it. And that is why we continue to say that our main focus will always be to ensure that the field is kept leveled. The international agencies keep telling us that we must be mindful that there is wealth being generated in St. Kitts and Nevis, that we see that there is wealth being generated, and we must be cognizant not to facilitate a widening of the gap between those who are making significant wealth and those who help those persons to make significant wealth. And so it gives us great pleasure to stand here, and I, on behalf of obviously the entire cabinet and the government side, and I'm sure the members of the opposition, to insist that we take care of our workers by making sure that they have a wage that they can live on. We have not just given promises to the electorate. We have not promised a livable wage and then not do it. Or we have not just simply resorted to programs that somebody can take away at whims and fancy. One of the differences between a salary and wage increase and, say, perhaps a social program is that you are guaranteed by law, you are guaranteed to get a particular wage when you work. Social programs can be discretionary, and people can use them sometimes to hold over people's heads. So when others would have committed to a livable wage, only then to turn it into PAP, only then to turn it into PAP and other things, we have done it so that you are guaranteed your empowerment and your advancement. So with these few words, Madam Speaker, not much to say than this is just a technical update to ensure that no one who works for more than the minimum wage ends up carrying home a net salary lower than someone who works for minimum wage. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the honourable member for St. Christopher 3. Is there another presenter?
May it please you, Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion, and just to add to this very simple bill, that in Section 2A, the adjustment is to the $520 per week, and similarly in 2B, the adjustment is to the amount that is to be the equivalent of $520 a week per year, which is $27,040. So I'm just alerting the House that we will seek to also add paragraph B, which will simply continue what the leader of the debate indicated as the technical adjustment to the bill. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the
Madam Speaker, I rise just to share a few observations. I would wish to associate myself with the comments made by the mover that we must all seek to do what we can do to elevate the position of our workers. Labor, as we know, is a critical factor of production. And we must ensure through our laws, through our Labor Department, through our policies, that we protect our workers. I have been somewhat ambivalent about the efforts being made by this government on the minimum wage front. Ambivalent because I recognize what they're seeking to do and the value in trying to provide some additional income to our workers. And I support that. The ambivalence comes because I have not seen from the government side any corresponding study or analysis as to the impact that these efforts will have. We have to recognize that efforts at social engineering, and this is one such effort, can have unintended consequences. And on my way to the Parliament this morning, I had a conversation where persons were speaking to the fact that a particular establishment sells food, cooked food, and that in response to this latest rise in the minimum wage, that they have already detected an increase in prices that the food is being sold at. So while I rise to lend my support, and I don't want that to be misconstrued, I am urging the government to monitor and to do the proper scientific, data-driven analysis as to whether what they think they're doing in terms of trying to better the lives of people who are earning at the lower levels, whether in fact those efforts are working. Why do I say that? I started by saying that labor is a factor of production. And when any business person is seeking to determine whether their business is profitable or not, and let us bear in mind that businesses are in business for profit. Unless you're the Red Cross or the Salvation Army, you are in business for profit. I am not seeing the type of analysis which is telling me and the nation, when you increase the minimum wage, and you say to TDC and to Rams and to Hosfords and to all of these private sector operations that they must now pay more to their workers. Bearing in mind, as I made the observation in an earlier presentation to this House, that an increase in the minimum wage may well have a ladder-like effect, because if I used to earn $100 more than the person below me, and that person's wages increase, I may well say I need to be stepped up as well, so that I can maintain the level. So it may also have a knock-on effect in terms of leading to increased labor costs for those who are even outside the bracket of the minimum wage. But if a man that I'm supervising is now inching up to me, I want a little inch up too. And the man above me going to say, well, he wants an inch up too. And so there's a possibility of this inching up leading to a knock-on effect in terms of the cost of labor. Now, if the cost of labor increases, Madam Speaker, what are businesses going to do? You think Rams is going to swallow the cost? You think TDC and Hosfords are going to swallow the cost? I doubt it. If they respond as the private sector is accustomed to responding, they're going to pass on that increase in labor to their customer. And so on the one hand, we're saying to our workers, through government policy, we want you to earn more. But the analysis that I want to see, Madam Speaker, is what on the back end? Because if you give a man now $500, and he says, well, all right, I'm earning an extra $50 a week. I'm just drawing a reference. But he has to pay more at the supermarket. He has to pay more at the lumber yard. He has to pay more for the goods and services. The lawyer's charging a little bit more for their representation. The doctor charging a little bit more for the doctor's visit. We may well find on a proper analysis that that $50 has made that person worse off. And so I feel that we need, when we start to try to introduce these types of policies, to have the requisite analyses done so that we can come back in 6 months, we can come back in a year, and we can say, listen, this has in fact worked to achieve the objective that we wanted to achieve. Empty platitudes like we now have the highest minimum wage in the Eastern Caribbean. Sounds good. But what is the value of that if we also have the highest cost of living in the Eastern Caribbean? Because we have to recognize that the nature of private business is that they are going to seek to ensure their profitability. And anything that we do to impact that, they will seek to pass on. So I rise simply to plead with the government that as they attempt these very useful efforts at social engineering, at helping those who need help the most, at ensuring that our lowest paid workers have a better wage, whether we want to call it livable or we want to simply say it's a better wage, that it in fact achieves the objectives that it is intended to achieve. And we cannot do that, Madam Speaker, simply by coming into the House and having a theoretical conversation. We must be able to say to that worker who's earning the minimum wage, listen, because of the efforts of this Parliament, because of the increase in your minimum wage, you are now better off. Because if you're not better off, what's the point? What's the point? You must be able to say you're better off. And the only way that you can say that people are better off is not simply to point in abstract to the fact that yesterday you were making $425 and today you're making $500, so therefore you're better off. No, 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 no. That is too facile and puerile an analysis. We have to go beyond that and to say, what has that increase in minimum wage done in terms of prices, in terms of the impact in the supermarket? And if the poor man, I don't like that language, but I'll use it. If the poor man is to be helped, you can't give with one hand and take back with the next. You can't be in the House and we say that we're doing something good for people, but in the end, those very people are worse off. So, I'm not at this point in opposition to what is proposed. What I'm saying to the government, please respectfully, take on board the need for analysis, for data, and for monitoring, so that you can come back in due course and say to the Parliament and say to the people of the country that this effort at social engineering is working, that it is not just some abstract effort to stand up and say, as we heard the presenter, labor taking care of people because labor increasing the wages. Sounds good. But if labor taking care of the people and labor increasing the wages and the people's lives are harder because they have to pay more in the supermarket, you see, it starts to sound a little different. And so the only way that we can truly understand the impact is for us to have as a policy that through whichever agency, Labor Department, Consumer Affairs, that we can track, monitor, and ensure. This additional $50, $100, whatever it may work out to, has really to be impacting people in a positive way and impacting their lives in a positive way. And I'm not just speaking in a vacuum. I want to say, Madam Speaker, I've had conversations with members of the chamber, not as a body, but individual members. And we all know when the task force was in place, I see my friend here in the gallery who headed the task force. I understand all that. It doesn't negate the point that I'm making. The point that I'm simply making is that the chamber at the time, and based on my interaction with some members, they still appear to me to have some residual concerns as to how this is meant to work. Because the chamber is not going to swallow the cost of this. And if the chamber is not going to swallow the cost of it, the question therefore is, who will pay the cost? And my fear is that is the very worker that we're trying to help that is going to end up paying the cost. And that is the paradox. That is the paradox of the situation. The very person you're trying to help by increasing their wages turns around paying the cost because the private sector says, hey, you've increased the wages on me, and I'm not going to bear that. Somebody has to pay it. So unless the government is going to say to the private sector, well, we're going to do that, and then on the other hand, we're going to reduce taxes or some mechanism. I don't know what the answer is. The issue is where the private sector is concerned. I spoke to someone about 2 weeks ago, and the person indicated that they were going to employ 2 people to work in a warehouse type setting. But in light of what's happening with the minimum wage, they think that they'll only employ 1 for now and monitor and see what happens. And that's why I'm saying analysis is important. Will an increase in minimum wage have a dampening effect on employment? Will employers now say, hey, I'm going to have to do more with less? And where I could possibly have employed another 1 or 2 fellows to help with this task, I'm going to ask this worker to do a bit more because I have to pay them more. Governments say I have to pay them more. So they will have to do a little bit more work. And the fellow out there who I was going to hire, I'm going to tell him, hold on. Can't afford you right now. Let the one that I have here put in more work. And so as we talk about making people's lives better, are employers now going to extract or seek to extract from the very employee that we're trying to help more? Tell them you got to work harder because I'm not going to hire any help for you. Is it possible that we have a situation where people start to say, well, since there's upward pressure on wages, that I'm now going to let go of a few people and deal with the increase that way? Because at the end of the day, employers are interested in their bottom line. And I'm fearful that the only employer in the country who is not in a position to pass on the cost of labor is the government. Well, that may be the case. But you see, I like to be able Madam Speaker, to pick up a document. I want to be able to read. I have not seen any analysis done yet because I think it's still early days. I don't know that we have had the time yet to see this at work and therefore to measure the implications of it. And all I'm doing today is saying that I want the government as a policy to be able to monitor and track these types of initiatives to come back to us to tell us it's working. Wasn't that a slogan one election? It's working. It's working. Can they come back and say it's working? And that's really my only brief contribution today. I support the effort, but I want to know and be sure that the people that these efforts are intended to benefit are actually benefiting from them. And we could only do that with proper analysis. We cannot do policy by guesswork. We have to be able to analyze, have to be able to look at the data. And if there is an ongoing committee in place, that's good. But they must be willing to tweak and to look at and to adjust as necessary to make sure that the people we say we want to benefit are in fact better off. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher. For Nevis 9. Is there another presenter? I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 5.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to make a brief contribution to the bill currently being debated, the Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025. Madam Speaker, let me say at the onset that in terms of persons making minimum wage being exempted from the payment of the Housing and Social Development Levy, that has been well established for a number of years. Certainly, one can understand the reason for doing so. An attempt is being made to ensure that as much as possible, these persons can take home as much money as they can. And so, in light of that, of course, one supports the particular piece of legislation. The leader of the opposition made some observations which I'm not going to rehash, because the record for this parliament will show that during the budget debate for this particular financial year, I would have raised the very same concerns with regards to the increase in minimum wage and whether or not it may have the desired effects. I went so far not only to look at the minimum wage itself, but I would have highlighted the fact that as of late last year, you also had an increase in the electricity rates being levied on business places. I also spoke to the fact that the bus fare had recently been increased. A lot of the persons who make minimum wage, of course, they use public transport. But the main point then was that businesses are not going to absorb the cost of an increase in minimum wage or the cost of an increase in electricity. Most businesses will pass these costs along to the consumers. The fact also is that the BBW has come to an end. And so, again, one wonder to what extent the increase in minimum wage will cushion any increases that we see in inflation. However, the main point that I want to get to refers to the fact that in a publication done by the IMF, I think it was earlier this year, one of the things which was pointed out is that here in St. Kitts and Nevis, while we have the highest minimum wage within at least the OECS sub-region, there is a concern relative to the productivity of the workers here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I heard the statement by the Minister with responsibility for labor in regards to the recent establishment of the National Productivity Council. Senator is trying to say something to me. Oh, sorry, okay. Yes. So, Madam Speaker, yes, the report pointed out that in terms of productivity, there is a concern in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis that productivity is low. So here it is that we have yet a second increase in terms of the minimum wage, and we're ensuring that as best as possible, that the workers and their take-home pay are being protected. But in terms of what they produce, I am of the view that we need to ensure that when businesses are paying persons, that those persons are actually providing an efficient and effective service for the money that they are receiving. It is one thing to increase the minimum wage. It is one thing to protect the amount of money that workers are going home with. But businesses must also feel comfortable that they are getting the most for their dollar from the workers in this country. And I would hope that certainly in terms of the Productivity Council, that this would be high on its agenda in terms of how we can ensure that the productivity of workers is increased in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. If we are going to attract additional businesses, if we are going to attract investors, investors will have a hard time considering St. Kitts and Nevis as their choice if you're going to be paying higher in terms of salaries than you're going to pay in other competing islands. But at the same time, in terms of the productivity that you're getting from the workers, the productivity is amongst the lowest within the sub-region. That is a reality that we need to look at. It is a reality that we need to take into consideration. We cannot continue to give the persons the impression that while it is that they are not producing at an adequate level, we continue to give them an increase in terms of salaries and wages. We cannot continue to protect them in terms of what it is they pay when we are not satisfied that the output is at an optimal standard, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, that is my concern relative to the increase in minimum wage. While I have no issue with workers getting a fair pay, they must also ensure that they give a fair day's work to whoever they are working for. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the honourable member for St. Christopher 5. Is there another presenter? I recognize the honourable member for Nevis 11.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I believe from this side of the aisle, I believe the point has been made that we're all in favor of ensuring that all workers are looked after in terms of fair and decent wage. But most of the point has been made by two speakers before me with regards to the impact that such an increase in the minimum wage may have on the private sector businesses out there in the private sector that are in the business of making a profit. And we cannot knock them for that, because if you're a private company, shareholders are seeking to look for a return on their investment. Everyone is looking for something out of their investment, so we cannot disregard that in any way. And so the point has been made by the leader of the opposition and, of course, the member for St. Christopher 5, that, of course, there must be some analysis of what is being proposed today. Or even before we would have come here today, there should have been some presentation of an analysis that has been done, or some report back from the consultations that was done with the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, for example, so that we are more informed and we can have a much more robust debate. But that being said, I just sat here and did some rudimentary maths, as they say sometimes. I'm not one who delve into much that deeply, but at least I looked at, a small sample as to what the impact this increase would have on a business out there that employs, for example, 20 workers who are at that minimum wage level. I did some maths and look at it as an increase of about $50 across the board for each employee, because last year, February, came, I believe it was February last year, where a similar bit of legislation amendment was done, born out of the fact that the minimum wage was increased in January of last year. So February came with the similar amendment, which is the amendment which does not impact the employee in terms of the 3% social and development levy. It is just borne by the employer. And if I were to quickly say that the move of the bill indicate that this will no longer have, or this will no longer be a deduction or that impacts the employee, but more so the employer. But that has been the case all the time since last year as well. So if 20 workers, for example, Madam Speaker, are to receive a $50 increase, that's an increase of $1,000 per week on the payroll of an employer. A 3% deduction paid by the employer, that is an additional $30 added to that $1,000. That's per week. If we were to look at, for example, you add both together, the $30 times 20, the $50 times 20, so 1,000 plus 600, that's an additional $1,600 per month. An employer would have to pay to employees plus also to Social Security. That can be multiplied over a 52 weeks period, Madam Speaker, which gives us, in the case of the wages, an additional $52,000. In the case of the social development levy, an additional $1,560. Add those together, that's over $52,000 added per year. That is a cost to be borne by the employer. If you go to 50 workers, which there are a few employers here in the Federation that in both islands have over 50 workers who are at the minimum wage level. And so you're looking at well over $100,000 added to the cost of that business. And the question was asked, well, how would the business recoup or recover this amount? Of course, there's only one way for them to recover, and that is to pass that cost on to the consumer. And the point was made before, I won't belabor it, but I just wanted to put some numbers into the mix so that persons understand, all of us in this parliament understand that this increase, even though it is one that we support, that our minimum workers or minimum wage workers should be in the best possible position, there is also some downside to it, there's some drawback to it, there's some negatives to it on the business side of it that we must not disregard. We must consider that because it has an impact ultimately on the cost of living that we have been talking about so much. Cost of living don't always see an impact from just importation of goods and services from overseas. It can be caused by some of our actions right here internally. So looking at these increases, it is something that we must look closely at, of course. We also must balance that with the fact that we want our minimum wage earners to be in the best position. But the point was made before that there must have been some analysis done since last year, February, to this point to say, well, the increase that we had last year, there's been some positive effects and it warrants this increase again. And we can speak glowingly about it, but at this point we certainly cannot. When you look at a business undertaking a cost of over $52,000 in one case, or if there are more workers, then it can push to well over $100,000, and then that is passed on, and then the rippling effect can be felt, would be felt all across the board. Even myself and anyone else would feel that. Yeah. So, Madam Speaker, that was just my input to say that the impact on its surface and based on the presentation made by the mover sounds good from a political sense, but from a business standpoint and from a realistic standpoint here in the community that we live, we have to look deeper at these things and to ensure that we are not creating a difficulty for an entire society when in truth and in fact we are seeking, yes, to look out for those who are considered the most vulnerable, yes, but also we have to be careful as to what we're doing. And with those few words, Madam Speaker, I may please you.
Thank you to the honorable member for Nevis 11. I recognize the honorable member for St. Christopher 3, mover of the bill, to do his wrap-up.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to wind up the debates on the bill before this honorable House, which deals with the Housing and Social Development Levy, to ensure that those who would have recently received a minimum wage increase, that they do not then, because of the deductions that do not happen for them, make more money than persons who make a little bit more than the minimum wage. Now, I want to thank the colleagues for their input on this very important bit of legislation and in acknowledging the significance of the efforts by the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party to be the only modern administration who has had the courage and the fortitude to push forward with the increase of the minimum wage and to further ensure that that there is balance and equity in terms of how deductions are done. I want to thank the members opposite in particular for raising the legitimate concerns of what the impact would be on the minimum wage. But as I wind up the debate, I want to systematically address some of the concerns that have been raised so that the general public is keenly aware that this administration has done its homework to ensure that we have the best outcome possible for the implementation of a $500 per week minimum wage. It is important to know, Madam Speaker, that at the heart of this administration's agenda is a very simple but powerful conviction that the people must come first. The people must come first. That is why, under the leadership of Labour Party administrations, we have done what no other administration before us has had the courage or the conscience to do in recent years. And that is doing the analysis, doing the monitoring, and increasing the minimum wage. This is, Madam Speaker, not just about a policy adjustment. It is really a signal to every worker, every mother, every father, every young person entering the world of work that their labor matters, their dignity matters, that their future matters. Madam Speaker, I want to be clear. This is not just about the increase on a pay slip. It is about food on the table. It's about rent that can be better paid. It's about children being able to go to school with lunch in their bags and hope in their hearts. It's about building a nation that values fairness and economic justice. Madam Speaker, the benefits of a minimum wage are wide and far-reaching. Let's talk about a few of them. Obviously, it would assist in poverty reduction. An increase in minimum wage directly combats working poverty. People should not work full-time and still live in poverty. And that is what the minimum wage is trying to achieve. It is our social responsibility as an administration to ensure that when our people put in the hours to work, that the salary or the wage that they take home can allow them to live in dignity. And this government refuses to accept any reality where we are going to consider only the benefits or the challenges of businesses and not consider the benefits and challenges for the working people of this country. So it is critical to ensure that we are addressing socially what we can do as an administration with respect to poverty reduction. Another important aspect of the minimum wage increase is the economic stimulus. And I want to address here some of the concerns that were raised by members opposite. The analysis shows that when low-income workers have more money, they spend it on food, on clothes, on transportation, on education, right here in our local economy. Come in. Check any analysis. Hold on. Check any analysis around anywhere in the world. Yes, well, I'm gonna get to it. I mean, that's a very simple question to answer. I mean, we have the facts. I mean, just now we had, and I'll address the BBW, and we could see exactly what persons want to spend their money on. But any economic analysis would show you that when you give low-income workers the additional social protection of help, they're going to spend it on the things that are critical for their family. In particular, food and clothes, transportation and education, etc. Right? This actually strengthens small businesses. And so I want to draw a very important observation to you. The amount of minimum wage earners in this country who are in jeopardy of having a negative impact on them, say lose their job because of the increase in minimum wage. The number of those who are not in jeopardy of losing their employment, whether they are in the government service, whether they are on our job attachment service, they're not in jeopardy of losing. Those are in the thousands. Those who are, maybe you may make an argument that some businesses may want to move out or reduce the workforce much lower. So what you're going to have is a disproportionate amount of persons having additional cash to spend in those very businesses that have the much smaller number of minimum wage earners. So the reverse can actually happen. That you could have, in particular, a small business that, yes, their bill has gone up. Maybe they have 2 or 3 minimum wage earners. So their bill has gone up by $250, or let's say $300, $600, or $900 for that month. But their sales increase by $3,000 in that same month, because more people have more money to spend on the things that are important to them. And I'm going to get to where the government is going to be paying specific attention to those types of things. So it provides an economic stimulus. In fact, I want to remind the listening public that in St. Kitts and Nevis, outside of the federal government and the Nevis Island administration, the larger businesses in this country do not pay minimum wage. So, no, I don't want to call names, but none of the names that were called here earlier today should be making any argument that their cost of operation has increased, because they're not paying minimum wage anyway. But the government is cognizant that you will have certain small businesses that will need targeted assistance programs and engagement to ensure that they're not negatively impacted. But the larger businesses, those represented in particular by the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, hardly any, it is a minute percentage that actually have, at the start of this project, minimum wage earners. And so their bottom line is not impacted. In fact, what's going to happen is that the minimum wage owners, well, we spoke about that, so we're going to talk about that. But the majority of the workers are not. As you would know, the government has the much larger proportion of minimum wage earners through its programs of assistance and otherwise. And so these businesses will actually see a boost. We can look at the last 18 months as evidence, where we did have an increase similar to this increase. And we have not seen any evidence as yet to suggest that it had a negative impact on the workforce. So economic stimulus is going to result from the increase in minimum wage. An important point is the improvement in productivity. But let's start with morale first. Now, one of the things that a minimum wage increase does is to help to improve the morale of the people doing the work. You find more motivated workers. And what we need to do, and what I want to thank the Minister of Labor and all of her staff and workers and stakeholders in terms of moving forward with the Productivity Council, is how do we turn this morale-boosting stimulus through a national minimum wage increase into more productivity. And so we are not blind to that. And so that has already been established, and work is ongoing to fully mobilize our Productivity Council to ensure that as we have increased the minimum wage, we have done our part. We have provided the morale-boosting minimum wage. We are now providing a framework under which we can scientifically and properly analyze what needs to be done to improve productivity. If I'm not mistaken, there was this swearing-in ceremony on Tuesday of this week of the Productivity Council, which include experts and stakeholders from a wide cross-section of our landscape here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So the government is doing what it needs to do to ensure that there is a return on this investment of increasing the minimum wage by ensuring that we have a productivity council to take advantage of the moral boosting of having national minimum wage increased. So we are doing what we need to do. So it has not just been, as some may want to suggest, just increasing the minimum wage. No, we didn't stop there. So the minimum wage increase in morale, worker morale, and we have to twin that, which we are doing, with increase in productivity. Reduction in social, another important aspect of the minimum wage increase, which has to weigh heavily on us as opposed to just focusing on what potential impacts there might be, is the reduction in social inequality. A fair wage is a powerful tool in closing the income gap and ensuring a more inclusive society. There are things that a government simply have to do, especially a government that is for and on behalf of the people. I mentioned earlier as I presented that the financial institutions around the world have been warning us about the potential for there to be increased wage gaps in our federation, meaning that the top percentage, 1%, 2%, 3% of the country continues to earn more wealth while the least or the lowest income earners are bearing the brunt of the economic development and having to spend their time without proper compensation to build up the same economy that the 1% and 2% are benefiting from. And they have warned that we have to ensure that that gap does not get too wide. One way, of course, is for the government to ensure that when people work, after the analysis is done on what is a wage that can provide a household to run effectively, that it has a particular minimum. And so we have done that in order to ensure that we reduce the potential of social inequality in our country. That is what the minimum wage assists in doing. Another important aspect of the minimum wage increase is enhanced national stability. Societies where the workforce is respected and rewarded are more stable, they are more peaceful, they are more progressive. That is the nation that we are seeking to build. That is the nation that we are building. That is why we have gone further. But before I do that, it is not as if that this is a particular surprise to anyone. This is not as if people did not have the opportunity to plan for a long time for the efforts of this particular administration. Why do I say that, Mr. Attorney General? Because we gave a commitment over and more than 3 years ago that one of the critical things that we would do if we were fortunate to get the support of the electorate to lead this government is to adjust the minimum wage to $500. We telegraphed it. We mandated it in our manifestos. We gave a commitment. And overwhelmingly people said that is a good mandate. And immediately we got to work. The Prime Minister asked the Minister of Labor, the member for number 2, to lead on the effort of the national minimum wage. And she engaged a team that include, I see in the House here, a former member of Parliament and intended chair of the Productivity Council, the chair of the Productivity Council, Ambassador Sam Condor. And with his tireless efforts, along with the entire team, they set about on a path to properly advise the government of how do we properly institute the commitment we had made of a $500 minimum wage. They did their work, their consultations, whether it was, as I said, with the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union, the Ministry of Finance and their experts, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And they came back and came up with a report advising that, yes, you want $500 minimum wage, but let us take it in stages. Instead of immediately putting it into the system, the advice was do it in stages. That was analysis that was done to underscore and assess what the impact would be depending on how much you require of the system at a particular time. And so in January of 2024, the first increase took place. And at that point, we told the business community, we told the country, we told the workers that in July of 2025, it will go to $500 a week. So everybody, every single person in this federation was keenly aware. Every small business, every large business, every medium enterprise, every small enterprise, all in between, were very much aware that this day would come in July of 2025 where the minimum wage must be increased to $500. And they have been preparing accordingly. And importantly, I want to address something, for instance, the member for number 5 said, is that the BBW has now gone, what is that going to add to the impact? But let's look at the numbers. And let us look at what this government strategically laid out leading up to this point. We said in December of last year that the worldwide economic outlook has been causing inflation that then is imported to our shores. And while we appreciate that we intend to increase the minimum wage in July of 2025, we understood that between that time, there also needed to be some cushion provided. And so the budget boost wallet was initiated, where many persons, and in particular I want to focus on the lowest income earners in our country, were getting an additional $250 per month to assist in this time of fluctuation in the economic winds, global economic winds, until we are able to bring the minimum wage on stream. And what do the numbers say? For Budget Boost Wallet, a minimum wage earner from January to June got $250. That same minimum wage earner from July till forever now gets an additional $303. For a long time, sorry. Minimum for a long time. Yes, because it's going to go up again, because it has to. But the point is, a minimum wage earner, the ones we are trying to protect in particular, will not be affected by the conclusion of a temporary economic stimuli or stimulus that was instituted by this government. So in June, you got an additional $250 as a minimum wage earner. In July, you're getting $303. You got to put your hands together for the administration for that. So we have strategically laid out that the ones we should be focused on looking out for are not. Yes, but in particular, there is a spiritual requirement that we are to look out for the least among us. We are required to by the God that I serve. Say that again? Right? And so, those persons who would have been on minimum wage at the start of the year would have gotten $250 extra support. Those persons will now be getting $300 permanent support, minimum, until it is then increased again. So the timing was strategic. It wasn't happenstance. It wasn't guesswork. So, Madam Speaker, because we know that the wage increase alone is not enough, that is why we have gone even further. We have established the National Minimum Wage Monitoring Committee. So we did not just institute a minimum wage and leave it be. We have a National Minimum Wage Monitoring Committee who has, over the past 18 months, been analyzing and monitoring the impact of the increase of the first phase of the minimum wage. I have in my hand a report that they have provided, and I would invite the member for number 9 who was asking for him to have a read of this very extensive. He has one? Okay, I'm told that. Yes, sorry. I understand that there is a report, and mind you, this cannot be the only report. But the member for number 9 has asked that this government considers and continues to monitor the implementation of the minimum wage.
That's a report before you introduce it?
No.
That's a report since you've introduced
Yes.
it?
Yes.
I haven't seen that.
Right. So I'm telling you that this is the National Minimum Wage Increase Monitoring Committee report, not the minimum wage committee that proposed the increase in minimum wage. I'm talking about the monitoring committee. And so here it looked at the assessment. I want to read some of what the report is outlining. So it looked at the recent macroeconomic developments. So it looked at what is happening locally, internationally, how the economies are working. So it did the macroeconomic outlook. It looked at the global economic outlook. And it looked specifically at the St. Kitts Nevis economic outlook. From that, the report goes into talk, and it does an assessment of the implementation of phase 1 of the increase of the national minimum wage from $9 to $10.75. So it did assess the impact of the first phase of the national wage increase. And it assessed the implementation of the phase. But then it also did a study on the impact of the proposed implementation of phase 2. So exactly what the member from number 9 is asking, that we don't just sing the chorus and repeat it because he said it sounds good. So if a chorus sounds good, we got to repeat it. That the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party is the only administration in modern times who has taken the courage and the conscience to increase the minimum wage for our workers. He said it sounds good. So if it sounds good, if something sounds good, you got to say it over and over again. So he said not just because it sounds good, we also need to monitor its impact on our economy. And that is what is being done. And so it looked at the central government, it looked at the training programs that we have, went as far as early childhood centers, small businesses, everything. Reform of those same training programs. And this is going to be a continued effort. So I really want the nation to put their hands together for the Minister of Labor and this administration for taking the steps necessary to not just implement a minimum wage, but to do the things that the member for number 9 rightly asked that we should be doing. But we have to ensure that he gets the information, because I think that he may not have some of this information. Some of the questions he asked as well, the honorable member for number 2 addressed in her statement before he was able to hear. So I invite him to get that particular information. So that is why we have gone this additional step by ensuring that we have a national minimum wage monitoring committee to ensure that we are on the pulse of anything to do with the increase in national minimum wage. We want to be talking to the small businesses. We want to know how it's affecting them. We as a cabinet, we meet on that to ensure that nobody is negatively affected by the increase in national minimum wage. So what does this do? It is not just a formality for us. It's not just to say, because the work is actually being done. This is actually a 56-page report, so this is very comprehensive. So it's not just a formality, but it is a functional, proactive body to ensure that the benefits of the wage increase are real and that they are lasting. So this committee brings together representatives from different spheres, the labor, private sector, government, civil society, etc. And this is what they're responsible for doing. Responsible for monitoring the actual implementation of the wage increase across industries, to assess the economic impacts on workers and the economic impact on businesses. Is to review the wage adequacy against inflation and cost of living, to recommend timely adjustments based on data and national realities. This is what a good government does. And I'm proud to be a part of this A-team, proud to have people who really care that we must continue to do for the good that we can do. So what we have here, Madam Speaker, is not guesswork. This is a strategic step-by-step plan and framework to ensure that we live up to that commitment that we made more than three and a half years ago, that we will level and increase the playing field, level the playing field for everyone to be able to live and live with dignity in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's not just guesswork. This government and this administration is guided by evidence. It is guided by dialogue. It is guided by care. The committee is to ensure and will ensure that this increase in minimum wage is not a one-time event, but part of an ongoing process of wage justice, of wage fairness, and of economic sustainability. Madam Speaker, this administration is proving once again that we do not govern for applause. We govern for impact. I remember a time when people did publicity stunts for applause. A lot of them had slogans like "coming soon." We do not govern for applause, we govern for impact. And the decisions that we have made as an administration has impacted the lives of everyone in this country, but in particular, the working class. And in a short space of less than 3 years, a weekly earner in this country has gotten over $606 extra per month. More than Lyft, more than BBW. We have increased the minimum wage that is yours. That another administration can't come in and look at the list and say, no, you ain't getting no social protection program help. We have instituted it because we don't govern for applause, we govern for impact. The increase in minimum wage, paired with the robust oversight of the monitoring committee, reflects our unwavering commitment to building a better future for all. Our unwavering commitment to powering progress. not just for privileged few, not just for the big earners. And we will not turn back, Madam Speaker. We will not sit idly by. We will press forward in our mission to make St. Kitts and Nevis a model of fairness, of progress, of prosperity for every citizen. And so, Madam Speaker, I am proud to support, of course, the increase in the minimum wage, and I am proud to stand here to ask for the blessings of this Parliament to pass this very simple bill, Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill, to ensure that while we do our monitoring, that while we do our increasing, while we do all of these things, that we also pay attention to the technicalities, to ensure that somebody who is making a little bit more than minimum wage, because of the deductions, don't end up making less than somebody for minimum wage. So I am proud to support this bill, proud to support the national minimum wage increase, and I am proud of this Labour Party administration A-team. Most of all, I am proud of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, who continue to demand, who continue to deserve, and now receive better. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the honourable member for St. Christopher 3, who just did his wrap-up, mover of the bill. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025 be read a second time. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Housing and Social Development Levy Act, Cap 20.21, and for related matters, otherwise known as the Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill shortly entitled Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a second time. House moves to committee stage.
Clause 1.
The question.
Oh.
Clause 2. It's clause 2. The question is that Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Madam Chair, I wish to point out that a document has been circulated to members, which includes an additional paragraph B, which intends to replace the expression $23,400 with the expression $27,040, which is the change of the threshold from the 450, which was changed in February 2024, and now the 520 per week. That is being changed by the amendment. So it's to allow for consistency throughout paragraph A and paragraph B.
The question is that Clause 2 be amended as circulated. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes. I recognize the honourable member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, I rise to, with your leave, to report that the bill entitled Housing and Social Development Levy, Amendment Bill 2025, has passed through committee stage with a slight amendment. And now I would want to move a motion to suspend Standing Order 57 so that we may read the bill for a third time and have it passed in this honorable House.
Yes, we have it.
I have it.
Yes, we have it. Yes.
But it's not signed.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
The question is that the bill shortly entitled, two things. Question is that Standing Order 57 be suspended. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Housing and Social Development Levy be read a third time and passed into law. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Housing and Social Development Levy Act, Cap 20.21, and for related matters, otherwise known as the Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill shortly entitled Housing and Social Development Levy Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a third time and passed into law.
Motions, resolutions.
I recognize the honorable member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I would like to take this opportunity to lay on the table the Statutory Rules and Order number 12 of 2025, Value Added Special VAT Reduction number 2, Order 2025. Also, with your leave, Madam Speaker, I rise to move a motion to have read in this honorable House the resolution of this National Assembly to approve value-added tax special VAT reduction number 2, Order 2025. Whereas it is provided by Section 27.2 of the Value-Added Tax Act, capped 18.47, that the minister may calculate the rates of tax at such other rate as the minister may by order specify, and that such order shall be subject to the affirmative resolution of the National Assembly. And whereas the Ministry of Finance has considered it expedient to introduce certain measures to create a fiscal stimulus and reduce the cost of certain goods for consumers, and whereas the value-added tax special VAT reduction number 2 order 2025, hereinafter the order, was published on the 9th day of July 2025 in Extraordinary Gazette number 37 of 2025, assigned order number 12 of 2025, now be it resolved, therefore, that the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis hereby affirms the order of the Minister of Finance to reduce the rate of VAT, A, on eligible school supplies as described in the order from the 1st day of July 2025 to the 30th day of September 2025 to a rate of 0%, and B, on eligible VATable goods as described in the order on the 15th day of August 2025, the 16th day of August 2025, the 12th day of December 2025, and the 20th day of December 2025 to a rate of 5%. Madam Speaker, this resolution continues the commitment of this Labour Party administration to provide relief at strategic times of the calendar year for those who wish to purchase items and for different items throughout our federation. We gave that commitment, and we continue in that, that vein, and in fact, taking the opportunity to do so well in advance of time, especially for the December VAT reduction days. It is important to note that for back to school, again, we are looking out for all of the people of this country. And so from July 1st of this year until September 30th, there will be no VAT on school supplies. Please take the opportunity to make your purchases as the administration continues to work on behalf of all people of this country. In addition, there will be 2 VAT days in August where persons can shop based on the items. I think they have been posted online. You can check SKNIS, you can check all of our social media and media pages to understand what is going to be VAT reduced. And these days are the 15th day of August 2025 and the 16th day of August 2025, so back to back in August. And then on the 12th day of December in 2025 and the 20th day of December in 2025. And at this time, it would be a rate of 5%. So, Madam Speaker, may it please you.
Thank you to the honourable member for St. Christopher 3. Seconder, I recognize
And
the
I
honourable
second,
member for St. Christopher 1.
I second the resolution, Madam Speaker.
The question is that a resolution of the National Assembly to approve value-added tax special VAT reduction number 2 order 2025 be adopted. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Adjournment.
Before you speak, honourable member, I am in receipt of a correspondence from the Office of the Prime Minister. The member for St. Christopher 8, he is absent today due to government duty. So I needed to place that on the record. You may proceed, honourable member for St. Christopher 1.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On the adjournment, briefly, I wish at this time to express sympathies to a number of persons. Firstly, let me express sympathies to all who would have passed in my constituency. Sometimes you get into trouble when you start calling names, but that's part of the game. We had Mr. Welch from Herbert Street. You had Brother Joseph from Ponds Extension. That's from our renowned cake baker, Jeanette, her husband, who passed away in New York and was brought home. And of course, my heart goes out as well to our student from Virchilds High School, our student Romney, whose mother, of course, is also a Newtowner and one of the employees at the Old Road daycare. And of course, my good friend Ike Truss, who was laid to rest. I remember my days with Ike in Scouts and as a server girl in the St. George's Anglican Church. So I express sympathies to all of the family members and of course our Pat Fulton on George Street. He too was laid to rest recently. To his wife and children and the entire family, I express my sincere sympathies. Madam Speaker, you know, this is a period of school year when we are most busy, at least I am, trying to attend up to 3 graduation ceremonies in a day. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all of our students who have graduated thus far at the various levels, and you know, all of the graduations are at a particular standard, whether you're in preschool or not. The preschool graduation ceremony is just as elaborate as the high school graduation or the primary school. But I want to thank all of those teachers in particular who would have worked with our students over this academic year. And as we go into our new school year in 2026, 25 September 2026, I continue to lend my support to them. I also wish at this time to single out the Early Childhood Unit, who have been celebrating 40 years, and they did an excellent job thus far with the celebrations, and we continue over into next year. And finally, Madam Speaker, I wish to I wish to congratulate all of those persons who have been successful of gaining a scholarship, whether it is to Taiwan, Southern University, Monroe, UWI, UVI, wherever it is. I want to congratulate you and give you that reassurance that government will continue to do what we can and ought to be doing for you towards your success, and to all those who have returned with their bachelor's, their master's, their PhD, whatever level you would have been successful. We say congratulations, and we look forward to you making St. Kitts and Nevis a better place. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 1. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, with your leave once again, I rise to bring a few remarks on the occasion of the adjournment. In particular, I want to thank the member for number 2 and the Minister with responsibility for tourism, etc., on the extraordinary success of the 2025 Music Festival, and by extension as well the incredible team that works along with the Minister at all levels in Ministry of Tourism and all of the other stakeholders involved for really putting on a splendid show to the rest of the world of what St. Kitts and Nevis is capable of doing. I want to commend all of the activities, all of the vendors. The economic spin-offs are tremendous. The results show increased visitor arrivals to St. Kitts and Nevis during that time. I think the member from number 9 spoke about how many persons came over to the island of Nevis. There was no, you could find no rooms, you could hardly find taxis, you could hardly find space during that period of the 2025 Music Festival. It was really an extraordinary event. I am so very proud of the growth of the music industry, of this particular music festival, which of course was the brainchild of, again, the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party administration when it started back in 1996, I think, or thereabout. And it continues to grow from strength to strength. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to commend the extraordinary work that went in to pulling off this music festival in such a grand style. I also want to commend the workers who are presently now working at the Warner Park site to ensure that we are ready to host another significant event in terms of cricket, where we will be hosting both the West Indies cricket team and the Australian cricket team. And I went to visit the Warner Park yesterday, I think it was, and the progress is ongoing and going very, very nicely. I want to also add something to that. There's been a lot of talk about that in the social media and elsewhere about our ability to host 2 significant events so close to each other. I think that this is a testament to the ability of St. Kitts and Nevis and our people. And we must not doubt that ability. We must facilitate it. We must support it. We must empower the people who can do it, right? And so we see that it is in progress. And I wanted to add something else to this. I've heard talk as well about the need for us to have dedicated spaces and so on for music festival. But as I look around the globe, the most developed places in this world still have figured out that the most effective use of spaces is to make them multi-use spaces. And as a small island nation like ourselves, we need to be figuring out how we can ensure that our spaces are multi-use so that we can maximize on efficiency and cost, as opposed to just thinking about having dedicated spaces for everything. The biggest concerts that are taking place in the United States, etc., all almost, the overwhelming majority are at sporting facilities. There's a reason for that. Those sporting facilities are already endowed with the infrastructure to facilitate large crowds, to facilitate the restroom services. They have the infrastructure for electricity. They have the infrastructure for water, for internet, for parking, for exits, etc. And so, as you look around the globe, the biggest shows in the world, when they have concerts to invite the biggest music stars, majority of them happen at sporting events. So we just have to figure out, how do we manage it effectively? How do we schedule properly? How do we plan way out? The World Cup is coming to the United States, Mexico, and Canada. They've been planning for 7, 8 years. Right? And in those same facilities, they're going to have concerts. Summer concerts, etc. So we have to make sure that we're paying attention to, yes, it's nice for us to have dedicated, and we will. I want to commend the member for number 4 in terms of the arts facility that will have the ability to host, different sizes of musical arts and other type of art festivals. But when you want things on a grand scale, you have to use the resources that you have and use them effectively. And so this government will provide all the support that is necessary to the staff at Warner Park, to the Ministry of Sports, to ensure that we show the world that we're able to host the largest and, the best music festival in the Caribbean at the moment, and also be a premier destination for cricket. I also want to take this opportunity to invite the general public to the opening of the Kim Collins Stadium, because this is an example of how not to use a sporting facility. Because there was an administration before who took the music festival there, but did not, in my opinion, plan properly to protect it. And so it damaged it. And so we had to come in and do significant repairs, which have gone through all of the stages of procurement, all of the stages of development, all of the stages of implementation, and now the general public is invited on Saturday, July 12th at 1 p.m., 1:30 p.m. for the opening or the reopening of the newly refurbished, spanking, shining new Kim Collins Athletic Stadium. And at that time, you will also have the opportunity to witness an invitational of primary school athletics. Exam revenge, because exams are over now, and the athletes are now ready to sprint and run and get the first taste of the brand new track. I want to again thank the Ministry of Sports and my own Ministry of Public Works for providing the technical assistance. The project, of course, is driven by the relevant client ministries, but we provide the technical support. And so on Saturday at 1:30, everyone is invited to the opening at Kim Collins. And the entrance is free, of course, and you can come and see the extraordinary transformation that has happened to the Kim Collins Athletic Stadium. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate 2 young persons from my constituency who have received the Conris Maynard All-Round Student, West Bastia All-Round Student Scholarship Award. That is an award that I've been given for maybe the last 11 or 12 years for a student who excels in different areas, academics, in sports. They look at their financial needs, their behavior in school. And so I want to congratulate from the Bronte Welch Primary School, Miss Kadia Brown, I think her first name is Kadia, and Mr. Cain Johnson at the Dr. William Connor Primary School. This year, they also received my other awards, which are the Salutatorian Award, which went at the Dr. William Connor Primary School, that went to Cain Johnson, and also the Top Female Award at the Bronte Welch Primary School, that went to Kadia Brown. So congratulations to them, and please make use of the scholarship award that you've been given to further your education as you go through high school. I also want to invite the children of the constituency number 3, to our annual Icon Roots and Culture Summer Camp, which starts on July 28th down to August 1st, I think it is, that week, where they get an opportunity to do all things roots and culture, making traditional sweets and savory products from our local cooks, learning how to sew, learning how to dance masquerade, drumming, as I said, cooking, making crafts, etc. It's a wonderful exercise. We are now in our 3rd year after having 2 very successful years. Last year, I think they had a tour on the scenic railway, and this year, again, they will have an exciting field trip. It includes, of course, a camp shirt, lunch every day. It's from 9 a.m. to 12 at noon. It's $25, $5 a day for the entire week. And it, as I said, includes all of the activities, a shirt, a T-shirt, and the lunch for the day. And finally, I would want to advise the constituency of our ongoing efforts to keep our community clean. Last weekend, we had a cleanup campaign with a series of, with bin placements. Last week we had in Buckley's, which is behind the movies area on the F.T. Williams Highway, and also in Lagreet from the reservoir. This week, coming Saturday 12th, in Boyd's Village on the Boyd's lawn. So remember this, Saturday 12th, there will be a bin placed on Boyd's lawn. On Saturday 12th as well, we are going to have one in the Trafalgar Village area along Val Francis Street. And on Saturday 19th, we will have a bin placed at the Hainsmith Village, which is on Millionaire Street, and in Camps by the empty lot just before Beater's Bar. And this is just an ongoing campaign. So if you didn't hear your area, we will get to your area eventually. But we have to do it in stages. So I just wanted to notify everyone on that. With that, unless my colleagues say anything I missed, I now seek and move a motion to have this House adjourned, signed 9.
I recognize the honourable member for St. Christopher 1.
And of course, Madam Speaker, I second that motion after having such an awesome time in Parliament today.
The question is that this House stands adjourned. Sign and aye. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House stands adjourned. Sign and aye.